Top of the evening to you, Michael.
To be sure.
Isn't that's why Paddy wore 3 condoms, isn't it? No, welcome, beautiful people, to our St. Patrick's Day special.
Aye, it is.
Tilly oi toy, tilly oi. Do you know much about St. Patrick's Day?
I know a little bit about St. Patrick's Day.
Beside the fact that every motherfucker and his dog puts on a bunch of green and gets as shit-faced as possible.
Basically, I know that St. Patrick's Day is in March every year, usually March, probably the same day in March.
Yeah, 17th.
There you go.
I know it's not St. Patrick's birthday. It's actually his death day they celebrate.
I know that St. Patrick wasn't actually a legit saint because he wasn't canonized. It's just kind of,
Doesn't surprise me at all.
But yeah, I get confused about these fucking Catholic shit. I mean, fuck. Easter happens on different days every year. Sometimes it's in March, sometimes it's in April.
Yeah, Dr. Carl explained why that was, and I don't remember.
That dude's a smart cunt.
I'm pretty irreligious.
Probably something to do with lunar cycles and something
Yeah,
like that.
It is. Yeah, it is. The only other thing I know about St. Patrick is I know a couple of things that he I think he was abducted from somewhere else, maybe from England.
Wouldn't surprise me. I know he wasn't Irish.
Okay, and then so I think he was abducted, taken into slavery. Heard some calling from God telling him to, like, run away, go down to the bay. There'll be a ship waiting to take you home. And then, so he went home, and then came back, and apparently converted a whole bunch of motherfuckers to Catholicism.
Yeah, well, he brought Catholicism to Ireland, basically.
Yeah. Apparently, they say thousands of people. And also the story was basically an allegory of how he chased the snakes out of Ireland, even though I may as well have fucking chased the pheasants out of me bedroom.
Well, yeah, science, bitches.
Yeah.
There were no snakes in Ireland.
It turns out, allegorically, snakes are a metaphor for druids. He was just basically getting rid of pagans.
Yeah, well, fucking those tree-worshipping fuckers.
Yeah. Dangerous.
I had a thing
Dangerous
for druids.
folk.
I had a thing for druids when I was a bit younger.
I remember you had a like a druid pin or sword, yeah.
I dug the whole... I liked Celtic symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
That spoke to me.
Yeah, same. Oh, yeah, I used to wear Celtic Star for a while.
I mean, I've got Celtic symbolism inked to myself in a nod to my mongrel Celtic heritage. Celtic. Mongrel Celtic heritage, even.
Portmanteau, we're keeping. Yeah, he's Celtic. He's got Celtic about him. Where is your surname from?
Well, the last name Hurst, the word itself means a low wooded hill. So that's why you have places like Normanhurst and Hurstville and stuff like that. It's because they're places that have had a low wooded hill, or they're built around a low wooded hill. But like my family, I had a second or third cousin, however many times removed, that was worked for the Australian Museum and did a whole genealogy project.
Yeah, cool.
So we go back to Clan Douglas in the Scottish Isles.
Okay, so it's Scottish origins.
But I'm not sure whether that's where the name comes from. That's just where she was able to trace back our family roots on my grandma's side. So
I'm more getting at the etymology.
The etymology of the word is either British, and it could also be Spanish.
That's what I thought. Okay. Yeah, because my surname's Irish. I've actually gone back and found my great grandfather's grave in New Birmingham.
Nice.
Which is New Birmingham. They just call it New Birmingham.
Why not?
Yeah. Lonely little grave. No other relatives there. Everybody pretty sure that was during the potato famine that he died, or just the Great Famine. And everybody else emigrated to Australia.
Yeah, right.
Pretty much. He had like fucking 9 kids or something, and
Heaps
his
of
wife.
potatoes in Australia.
Yeah. Or they weren't blighted.
Oh, well,
like they were there.
They weren't fucked up.
Yeah. Why else are we here?
Well, we're here to drink whiskey.
Exactly.
Obviously. But
we're going to put a spin on it this time.
Well, let's
jumping across the ditch.
Well, we've focused so much on Scotch whiskey. Mm-hmm. We've dabbled in Australian whiskey. Mm-hmm. What we haven't really explored is Irish whiskey. The whiskey with an E.
I don't mind an E every now and then.
Just bickies.
They ain't what they used to be, though. So this is going to be a 2-part episode, I feel. And the first half, we might go into a bit of history about Irish whiskey, because there's a long history to it. It's actually pretty much the oldest form of whiskey in the world. And the second half, we're going to do what we always do, 3 samples from selected distilleries. This time, Irish.
Sounds fucking wonderful.
All right.
So in celebration of St. Paddy himself.
St. Paddy.
Who wasn't Irish and didn't drink. And
wasn't even a fucking saint.
It's fucking...
But hey. Jeez. Yeah. Well, Irish whiskey, obviously, made in Ireland. And the word itself comes from Irish or Gaelic Uisce, which means water of life. It's
Did you look into that fucking pronunciation? You
said
that with a lot of fucking confidence. That wasn't the usual fucking it could be sherry.
Uisce beatha.
Yeah. Whisker.
Uisce. I'd heard it pronounced a few times before at various tastings. And you can see how just phonetically Uisce became whiskey, basically.
Well, I read somewhere that it was the Normans that couldn't pronounce the actual Celtic use of the word, and okay. that was the etymological morph from that into something that sounded like whiskey.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
makes sense.
And the Normans were they
French?
Are they French?
Yeah, Normandy, isn't it? That's where they're from.
Like with it, so they were like the Gauls in Asterix and Obelix, yeah.
I never really read Asterix and Obelix.
Fuck, I got right into those comics, man.
My best mate when primary school, he was right amongst it, but
like that was some.
I was too busy outside kicking a football, pretty much.
Yeah, look,
science was pretty much what I read when I was a kid.
I wasn't huge on comics, but fuck, I really loved funny wordplay, and for a couple of, I think they were Swiss dudes that
I thought they might have been Belgian, maybe. Wasn't it all in French?
It might have been Belgian, actually.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't read it in French because
but
I think
that's
French.
I think that's where it was from, though. Like it was the original.
I tell you what,
French.
Those dudes were.
That's why Gerard Depardieu plays fucking Obelix in the movie. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, right. I don't think I got all the way through the movie. Okay. It was pretty ordinary compared to the
yeah, I'm sure it was.
I mean, they were really comics, almost like graphic novels, but on a really entry level phase. But gee, they were punny. They were punny as fuck, man.
I might have to try and revisit some of those.
Yeah, they were clever. I enjoyed them. Anyway,
also, we didn't have too many in the school library.
Yeah, so we had a bunch.
Okay.
So I'd go to other libraries.
Yeah, right.
I won't say steal, but permanently borrow them. Well, I didn't even permanently borrow them. I lent them to other people.
Okay.
It was just like I privatized the public library system. I was an entrepreneur. I was ahead of my time.
A very poor entrepreneur.
yeah. I forgot the part where you were supposed to make money out of it. I just enjoyed them so much. I go, dude, fucking read this. And they never made their way back to the library. Yeah. I'm probably banned from a lot of libraries, and I probably owe several houses worth of library fines due to compound interest. Shh, don't tell anyone.
Nice.
Anyway, we digress.
Yeah. Pretty hard, as usual. Mm-hmm. Well, once upon a time, Irish whiskey was the most popular spirit in the world. And Ireland boasted at least 28 distilleries in the 1890s. By 1966, it had fallen to just 2.
Fuck, that's a big drop.
Yeah. And by 1972, the remaining distilleries, Bushmills and Old Middleton, were owned by just one company, Irish Distillers.
Cool.
But the monopoly ended in 87 with Cooley coming to the fore, who are the makers of Connemara, one of Ireland's few peated varieties.
I think you bought me a bottle of that back in the day.
Yeah, I think maybe for your birthday.
Yeah, there's a bottle on my shelf, and I'm fairly
about
sure it came from you.
45 years ago, maybe. Yeah, it was a while ago. Since the 90s, Irish whiskey has been the fastest growing spirit in the world. Exports grow by 15% per annum, thereabouts. And as of December 2019, Ireland has 32 distilleries in operation. I've also read they have up to 50. Maybe 50 by now. That is, what, a year and a bit out of date.
Sources disagree.
Yeah. And it says here, more planned, more under development. But many of them haven't been operating long enough to have whiskey produced on site sufficiently aged for sale.
Yeah, right.
Irish whiskey is a protected European geographical indication, much like our protected localities in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few key requirements to be named Irish whiskey. So it must be distilled and matured on the island of Ireland. No shit. Which is, both the Republic and Northern Ireland. From a mash of malted cereals with or without whole grains of other cereals which has been not sacrificed by the distaste, good on you. Saccharified by the diastase of malt contained within, with or without other natural enzymes. Must be fermented by the action of yeast and distilled at an alcoholic strength less than 94.8%. In such a way that the distillate has an aroma and taste derived from the materials used, and only plain water and caramel colour is added to it. Not a fan of adding the colour.
Fuck no.
That's what the cask is for.
Exactly fucking right.
And subject to maturation of the final distillate for at least 3 years in wooden casks, such as oak, not exceeding 700 litres capacity. I didn't realise there was a cap on the size of the cask.
Makes sense.
It does in a way, I guess. The larger the cask, the
less
contact with the wood.
Yeah, less surface area.
Must retain the colour, aroma, and taste derived from the production process referred to above, and have a minimum alcoholic volume and it must have a minimum alcoholic by volume content of 40% by the time it's in the bottle.
Fair enough.
Individual technical specifications for the 3 varieties of Irish whiskey: single pot still, single malt, single grain, and blended whiskey, which is a mix or two of the 3 first varieties, are also outlined in the technical file. The use of the term single in the aforementioned varieties being permissible only if the whiskey is totally distilled on the site of a single distillery. And Irish whiskey is also typically triple distilled, although there's a few double distilled varieties going around. When it comes to labelling, there are several regulations governing the labelling. In particular, spirit drinks must not be labelled, packaged, sold, advertised, or promoted in such a way to suggest they're Irish or any of the sub-varieties unless they meet the relevant requirements that we just talked about.
So you can't go distilling fucking Indian whiskey and call it Irish whiskey.
Exactly. You can probably say it's Irish style if it's triple distilled, pot still, or something like that. But you can't call it Irish whiskey.
Someone would still see you.
Yeah. You'd end up shortchanged either way.
Yeah.
I reckon there'd be a fucking long court case. Any age statement must refer to the age of the youngest whiskey used, much the same as Scotch. And traditionally spelled with an E, it can also not have an E. It's another thing I think I've mentioned before. I remember hearing on the Tim Ferriss podcast.
I think he had a guest on that wrote a scratch and sniff book.
Yeah.
I can't remember the dude's name. Interesting dude, but I'm pretty sure he mentioned the fact that
if you want to know, also the countries that produce whiskey, if they have an E in the country name, then they'll spell whiskey with an E.
Typically,
basically, typically. Like Scotch, Irish whiskey comes in several forms, and the name of the style depends on the type of grain used and the distillation process. Traditionally, it was produced in a pot still, and Irish whiskies made in a pot still fall into two categories. You've got your single malts, which is made from barley entirely distilled in a pot still within a single distillery, and you've got single pot still, which is made from a mixture of malted and unmalted barley, completely distilled within a single distillery. They've also called that pure pot still in the past and Irish pot still. And it's pretty much the most common style of whiskey until blends started coming about in the 1900s. You got grain whiskey as well, same as Scotch, I guess. It's produced from a continuous distillation in a column or coffee still rather than a pot still. And can be produced from a variety of grains. It's usually lighter, more neutral in taste, and you rarely find that spirit on its own. Although you might get a couple of coffee still varieties.
They usually put that in blends, don't they?
Yeah. Majority of grain whiskies used to make blended. And blended whiskey, a mixture of the above styles.
We have a history for you. They reckon that Irish whiskey was one of the earliest distilled drinks in Europe, rising from around the 12th century. Now I know that the Scottish love to say that theirs was first, and I'm probably sure that if the Yanks went back more than a few hundred years, they'd say that theirs was first too. I mean, everyone wants to bragging rights. I'm sure that there's some tribe of indigenous people somewhere that say they've been distilling some form of whiskey like spirit, probably rum, for 30 or 40,000 years.
Just fruits that ferment.
Yeah, well, that's it. But we've got a little bit of, I mean, it's hard. It all predates written history, right?
Yeah, that's it.
But it's believed
a lot of that history is oral.
But some of the I won't say rumours because they're a little stronger than rumours. But it's believed that the Irish monks brought the technique of distilling perfumes back from southern Europe around 1000 AD, and the Irish then modified the techniques to obtain a drinkable spirit. Now that wouldn't surprise me, right? That if I've got some Irish mates, and I reckon that if anyone was going to go, perfume, that tastes like shit. What if we can make it better? I reckon it'd be the Irish that did it.
I wonder if it can help me get off my face and or my dick hard.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what we're all looking for, right? But the spirit produced differed greatly from what we'd recognise as whiskey. Obviously not aged and flavoured with herbs such as mint, thyme or anise.
I think they refer to that stuff as a posheen.
Yeah.
Which is basically the unaged spirit.
Yeah. Typically spelt Irish and looks completely different to how you'd actually say it.
Yeah. Also, I imagine that the herbs would make it taste a fuckload better.
Well, I think you'd have to put the herbs in it to make it potable. Otherwise, you're just like, oh my fucking God, where'd this avgas come from? But, so apparently Irish mist whiskey liqueur is purportedly based on such a recipe. But so the oldest known written record goes back to 1405 in the annals of you've done your pronunciation.
I didn't do this one, but I'm just gonna go straight up. It's spelt Clonmacnoise.
There you go. Annals of Clonmacnoise, where it was written that the head of a clan died after taking a surfeit of aquavita or aquavitae. I don't know. My Latin's not great. At Christmas. So The first known mention in Scotland dates back from 1494.
I
so.
fucking love that so much. He basically poisoned himself.
Yeah.
Gave himself
alcohol poisoning.
Liver failure at Christmas.
And basically, that in those days they didn't have a working stomach pump, so you gave yourself alcoholic poisoning. He's done
himself a Bon Scott.
So by 1556, whiskey was widespread, as mentioned in an act passed by the English Parliament, which made it technically illegal for anyone other than the peers, gentlemen, and freemen of the larger towns to distill spirits without a license from the Lord Deputy. But as Crown control did not extend far beyond the Pale, a fortified area around Dublin, this had little effect.
Did you have any idea where that phrase "beyond the pale"
I've heard it a bunch of times, never in that context though. Usually the way I've heard that phrase is, "Oh gee, that was beyond the pale." So the context would be well outside a reasonable reaction, or well outside a reasonable expectation, I suppose.
Yeah. I found that really interesting, so I sort of digressed a little bit and looked into it, whereas like the idiom comes from Latin, like palus, which means basically stake. So it's what or like a fence post, but that's what you would have you would have fortified the area with. So
yeah, right. So beyond the pale is kind of beyond the boundaries?
Exactly. It's outside the boundaries. So then that became sort of metaphoric for human activities. It's outside the boundaries of what was normal.
Interesting. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I found that kind of interesting. I love etymology.
Well, I dig it. But, so, I mean, Irish whiskies, well, I mean, it's different, obviously, to most Scotch whiskies. A smoother finish, as opposed to the smoky, earthy overtones, are common. And that's obviously because the Irish don't, I don't know if they don't have peat, but they don't tend to use peat in their processes.
Yeah.
So was everything gas-fired?
To malt well, not back in the day, I guess. I've got no idea what they would have used. Maybe it was just wooden coal.
And I suppose some of their stuff might not have been malted because it's the malting that...
It was a mixture of the two, as we said earlier. Some of it was malted, some of it wasn't.
So I wonder what they used instead of peat, because I've only come across a single peated Irish. I know there's probably more than one. I've only come across the one.
There's a few examples apart from the Connemara, as we mentioned before. You got Pierce and Dunville and Waterford.
Yeah, right.
They all do peated varieties.
Yeah, nice. But it was really, because I suppose there's always inflated numbers. If you counted every man with an unlicensed still in Scotland back in the days before the Excise Act, you'd have 15 million. And it's probably similar in...
like you said earlier, anyone that's got a bathtub.
Anyone with a bathtub can distill almost anything. I think the bathtub gin in Prohibition times. But I think it was 1608, King James I granted a license to Sir Thomas Phillips, a landowner in Bushmills. Through this license, Old Bushmills Distillery lays claim to being the oldest surviving grant of a license to distill in the world. But that's bullshit, isn't it, Rick?
That's rather fucking tenuous, actually.
That's market speak, isn't it?
Kind of. Yeah.
Because with the current Bushmills Distillery Company wasn't registered to trade until 1784.
So I want to fucking interject here a little bit from the whiskey guide that the Rev wrote.
The Rev.
He sort of...
A figure of great controversy.
He sort of goes into... I'll just read straight from the book.
Why not? It's not plagiarism when you put these quotation marks in there.
There you go. So a much harder story to swallow is the Irish distillers' claim that Bushmills is the oldest distillery in the world. It isn't. It's certainly quite an aged place, and my telltale old bottle says, just as the trademark application did centuries ago, that it was established 1784. Illicit distilling is said to have been carried out on site for some half a century before. Yet obviously such antiquity is not enough for some, because every bottle today makes a point of the year 1608 and claims it's from the world's oldest whiskey distillery. The reason for the claim is, as he just said, King James I gave the grant to Sir Thomas Phillips in 1608 for whiskey to be made within the county of Coleraine, otherwise called O'Kane's country, or within the territory called the Route in County Antrim. It's a pretty big tract of land.
Yep.
And until 1978, whiskey was being made by Coleraine Distillery, though they didn't make such audacious claims regarding the age of the distillery. The simple fact is that Bushmills did not begin life until 1784. It's the oldest whiskey distillery in Ireland, but not the world. Just to underline the point, if you or I set up a distillery in the same area, although established in 1996 or 97, we could share the same dubious right as Bushmills to claim the oldest distillery in the world. Or maybe I could set up the same in a part of Scotland from which Friar John Core operated and date my new company 1494.
Yeah, so that's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
So the honour goes to Kilbeggan Distillery.
Sure does.
Formerly Locks Distillery, which has been licensed to distilling since 1757, but not continuously. That was silent for a fair track of time. Near 50 odd years, 1954 to 2007.
Yeah,
but
same old story for a lot of distilleries, really.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, not all, very few of them have been continuous. Yeah. Very few of them. It's a fucking risky business.
Yeah.
But so they get to lay claim to the title of the oldest licensed distillery in Ireland. And they also have what is believed to be the oldest operational copper pot still in the world, a whopping 250 years old. That's fucking old.
It's fucking older than Australia.
Well, I was going to say, that's older than some countries, including the one we're in. So, there you go. But, as always, the government want their fucking part, don't they? So it was 1661, the Crown introduced a tax on whiskey production. All whiskey distillers were to register and pay taxes. Bastards. But there's limited official record of whiskey distillation during this period. Probably because registration until 1761 was done voluntarily. And I don't know about you, Rickus, but I'm not the kind of bloke that fucking distills whiskey and volunteers to pay tax on it.
Not signing nothing.
Fuck no. That is a little ridiculous. Because registration entitled paying a tax. So you avoid paying taxes whenever you can. Legal disclaimer, I pay all of my taxes and I don't avoid paying any of them, ever, for any reason whatsoever. Anyway, another reason is that those tasked with enforcing the laws were frequently local landlords, and if the tenants were illicit distillers, it was in their best interests to not enforce the law.
Yeah, you want your rent money.
That's it. I'll tell you what, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Exactly.
And my back scratching requires a little bit of a legal distillation. Fucking, yeah, I'll take 10%. Thank you.
Yeah. Pay me in Pochine.
Yeah. But, as always, demand grows, driven by a bunch of stuffs, probably strong population growth and, I don't know.
What else? Breed like rabbits when you're fucking on the drink.
Yeah, true. And also,
Catholics.
Let's be honest. 1700s in Ireland, probably a pretty depressing time. And I don't know about you, but, I tend to drink to make myself feel better.
Yeah,
so.
And getting your end away always makes you feel a bit better.
Exactly. So, in the 18th century, as demand for whiskey in Ireland grew significantly, the distillers prioritised quantity over quality. It's the same old fucking story, isn't it? It's the fucking...
dollar signs in your eyes.
It's exactly right. It's the fucking... What were those cunts called?
I need more information.
Yeah,
before
that's
I
fair.
start saying just random words.
It's the Patterson crash all over again. It's the high demand, unscrupulous cunts fucking going, this is my payday, this is my cash cow. Let's make cheap shit whiskey and make money out of it and fuck it up for everyone.
Yeah. And retire to the Caribbean.
So Parliament then had to pass an act in 1759 prohibiting distillers from using any ingredient other than malt, grain, potatoes, or sugar in the production of whiskey, and specifically prohibiting several unsavoury ingredients. I wonder what some of those unsavoury ingredients were.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Like, I mean...
What did they have access to?
What did they have lots of? Dirt?
Yeah.
Grass?
Yeah. Who knows?
Fucking all kinds of...
We could make plenty of shit up.
Yeah, it's true. We don't have that information. But, I mean, it wasn't
It's
fucking...
something that we could...
It wasn't rare gemstones.
We'll put that in the...
Yeah, it wasn't fucking...
It wasn't gold
plated. It wasn't gold. So...
Arsenic? I don't know.
Yeah, fucking... Cow shit. There would have been a lot of that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they were putting cow shit in whiskey.
Bear Grylls
they might have, though.
Bear Grylls would down it in a second.
I mean, I'll do anything for what they pay him. Maybe not anything.
What, drink your own piss? Everyone's got a price.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's got a price, and mine's probably lower than you think it is. So obviously, underreporting of output of licit and tax avoidance of illicit producers became more significant. So there was another act. There's always another fucking act, isn't it? 20 years later in 1779.
Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids.
Yeah. And significantly reformed how the taxes payable on whiskey production were calculated. Previously, taxes were payable on production volumes, which were subject to manipulation. Oh, no, sir, I'm only capable of producing 10 litres a year. Fucking bullshit. So the Act removed the potential for underreporting by making taxes payable on a distillery's potential output.
Yeah, that's rubbish.
That is rubbish. Absolutely. So whatever the capacity of your pot stills
I reckon that would have been heavily inflated.
Fuck yeah, of course it would have been. Anyway.
Yeah. I did actually read. I cut that out. I think a 500 litre still was capable of producing like 35,000 litres of spirit per month or something.
Fuck
me. That's what 2 distillations a day basically.
And it's rubbish distillation too.
It's garbage. Yeah.
So the Act made assumptions about output. So many of the smaller or less efficient registered distilleries were forced underground. Yeah. And this is what happens when you do this kind of shit. People just go back to their bathtubs.
Yep.
People just go back to doing it dodgy.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's how people go blind.
Great numbers. When the Act was introduced, there were 1,228 registered distilleries in Ireland. By 1790, so that Act was brought in 1779. By 1790, this number had fallen to 246.
So 1/5, 20% of them are left.
And in 1821, so 31 years later, there were just 32. And obviously that had the effect of concentrating illicit distillation in a smaller number of distilleries based mainly in the larger urban centres like Cork and Dublin. And rural areas distillation became a more illicit activity, in particular the northwest of Ireland where agricultural lands were poorer.
Yeah.
But demand kept increasing. Early 1800s again, population growth, changing consumption patterns. So obviously it started to become more ingrained in the Irish culture. So much of the demand that was being met by the small-scale illicit distillers. So much illicit spirit was available during this period that licensed distillers in Dublin complained that it could be obtained as openly in the streets as they sell a loaf of bread. In the worst Irish accent ever. I apologise for anyone that even knows an Irish person that listened to that.
Whiskey and cheese.
I'd love to say I won't do it again, but we all know I'm lying.
Mine's probably not much better. It's conviction, it's confidence. Just be confident. So in a bit of reform and expansion after 1823, the authorities finally acknowledged the problems with the licensing system and they cut the duties by half and also published an excise act making legal distillation a little bit more attractive. They removed the need to rush production, leading to improvements in fuel efficiency and product quality, and restrictions on the type and capacity of the stills were removed, so they had more freedom to tinker with their equipment.
Probably made the fucking whiskey better.
Yeah, I only see this as a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was also a change to how the duty was paid, so it was charged monthly based on still output. So they were taxed before the whiskey was sold.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's garbage, utter garbage. And now it was only paid when the whiskey was sold, so made its storage in bond more attractive.
Well, there you go. That's when you actually start getting aged whiskies.
Exactly. That's first thing I thought when I read that is it's improved the quality already.
Yep, makes sense.
Yep. In 1821, 2 years before the reforms, there were 32 licensed distilleries, as we said. By 1827, it had risen to 82 and reached 93 by 1835, which was a 19th century peak. And that's also what they refer to as the golden era of Irish whiskey. Little fun fact, prior to the Excise Act of 1823, the largest pot still in Ireland had a capacity of just 750 gallons or 2,850 litres if you're not an empirical fucking archaic measurement user.
Or American.
Yeah. By 1825, the Middleton Distillery operated a 31,618 gallon still, which is approximately 120,000 litres. It remains the largest ever built.
Yep.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, someone went, fucking payday. Payday.
Imagine it, fucking just the price of the copper in that. Would have just been ridiculous.
Jesus. That's why it remains the largest ever built.
Yeah.
It used 30% of the world's copper.
Yeah. It would have to be, the pressure of the liquid too, at the bottom. There would have had to be some fucking meaty copper. Yeah. The largest pot still in operation as of 2014 is located next door in the new Middleton Distillery, and it is about 75,000 litres or 16,500 gallons. Domestic demand reduced somewhat in the mid-1800s due to the temperance movement, wankers,
fucking
of the
wankers.
30s and the Great Famine of the 40s. Unfortunately, 1 million Irish died and another 1 million emigrated. And as I said earlier, my family are responsible for at least 10 of them.
There you go.
Between 1823 and 1900, however, whiskey output in Ireland still increased fourfold, and with access to the overseas markets provided by the British Empire, Irish whiskey became the most popular spirit in the world. In the early 1800s, Dublin emerged as a major distilling centre, and by 1823 they boasted the five largest licensed distilleries in the country. By 1878, the 4 largest firms, or the Big Four, as they were going to be known, John, let's call him Metallica Jamieson, William Slayer Jamieson, John Megadeth Powers, and George Anthrax Rowe.
Nice top 4.
Dominance. They are the Big Four, aren't they?
Well, yeah,
That's what they say.
There'd be people that would argue with you. I'm not one of them.
Okay. Who would replace them?
I'm not one of them.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that's when they say the Big Four in metal. That's who they refer to.
They probably would.
The chief output of these distilleries was single or pure pot still, made from a mix of unmalted and malted barley, solely distilled in pot stills. And this time, I don't want to stereotype too hard. I'm not going to say in typical Irish fashion. Everyone wants to save a buck where they can. But this style emerged as a means of avoiding 1785 tax on malt. By the late 1880s, only 2 of Ireland's then 28 distilleries were producing single malt whiskey, and the rest were steadfast in their devotion to pure pot still.
Yeah, fair enough.
So Irish whiskey's at its peak, and it's hard to imagine that Scotch, which was then produced by small-scale producers, pretty much unheard of outside of Scotland, would soon become the world's preeminent drink, while Irish whiskey would basically take a massive dive, culminating with all of Dublin's great distilleries shutting their doors. And by the late 20th century, pure pot still whiskey had pretty much disappeared. Thankfully, since 2010, several new single pot whiskies have been launched.
Now, for a decline like that, you're usually looking at the same culprit, and that's usually new technology. There's usually something that comes in and makes something much more efficient, much faster, and therefore shitter. And that is true in this case because it was the... I mean, look, there would have been a number of factors, but one of the main turning points was the patenting of in 1832 of the coffee still by, you guessed it, someone coffee. Anus coffee.
Anus, yeah.
And
hilarious, unfortunate name. I would not like to drink anus coffee.
No,
although there's that cat shit coffee that everyone fucking raves about.
Oh, look, there are several types of coffee that go through the anus of some animal or another that people pay stupid amounts for and actually manage to convince themselves that it's better than normal coffee. It may be. I'm not willing to pay for anus coffee. I don't even know if I'd drink anus coffee for free. Yeah, I'll try anything once, right? Maybe even twice. Anyway, ironically, anus coffee was both the former Inspector General of Excise in Ireland and subsequently a distiller himself. And he patented...
Yeah, couldn't resist the power of the dark side.
That's it. Yeah, he didn't paint it. He painted it, the coffee still. And...
do you mean patented?
Well, I mean, you say tomato, I say tomato.
I just sound like you said he painted a coffee still.
Exactly. You say patent, I say patent.
I know, painted.
I'm pretty sure I said painted it.
All right. Cool.
Maybe I did say painted it. We'll edit this bit out. But he patented it. Patented it. Anyway, he did that thing with patents. And therefore, they let him sell it under his own name. And the coffee still is a continuous distillation apparatus that offered an improvement on the traditional pot still. So basically, pot stills are operated in a batch manner, and coffee stills could and can be operated continuously. It makes it cheaper to operate, requires less fuel, it's more efficient. They produce a continuous rapid output of spirit, much capable of producing a far higher strength output than pot stills as well. Of course, every advantage has a fucking disadvantage, and as a consequence of increasing the alcohol concentration of the product, coffee stills removed some of the other volatile components responsible for flavour. So their use proved extremely controversial when introduced because Ireland was the initial testing ground for the coffee still. And Coffee showcased them in his own distillery and offered them to a whole bunch of other Irish distillers. 7 in operation by 1833, but the larger distilleries, not particularly interested. The Big Four... Well, I mean, they're the Big Four. They're obviously proud of what they produce.
They're the Big Four for a reason.
And questioned if the product, grain whiskey, for which they termed neutral or silent spirit, which is
kind of cheeky.
Yeah, well, it's a euphemism for tasteless.
Yeah.
Could it even be termed whiskey? No. Metallica Jamison didn't think so. He trialled the coffee still, but chose not to adopt it because he wasn't satisfied with the quality of the product it produced. Much like Glenfarclas when they tried steam coil heating. Now, what episode was that?
That was episode 12. If you want to go back and check that out, that was you did a good job there.
So it was the English gin and Scottish whiskey distillers who proved more receptive to it. And the adoption of the coffee still in Scotland was indirectly assisted by Ireland's Great Famine of the 1840s, because there was a repealing of the Corn Laws. Now, you've got to be rich in things other than corn to have Corn Laws. Because the Corn Laws, obviously, I think it was 1815, 1846, the import of cheap foreign grain into Britain and Ireland had been restricted. And corn is pretty cheap and it's pretty foreign. It's pretty American. After the laws were...
I wonder if it was still subsidised in America back then. Maybe that's why it was so fucking cheap.
It probably was, wasn't it? I mean, Jesus, that's a whole rabbit hole in itself.
Yeah.
Legit. Fucking...
Yeah, we should...
Corn has got a lot of shit to answer for in that country.
Yeah. We should probably continue, otherwise we'll fucking...
Fair. So after the laws were repealed in 1846, cheap American corn could be imported and used to produce neutral spirit in coffee stills. Obviously the spirit lacked in taste, but it could be blended with traditional pot still derived spirit to produce a cheaper blended whiskey. And the blended whiskey, which was less intense than pure pot still, proved very popular in Britain, sadly capturing much market share from Irish pure pot still whiskey. The adoption of the coffee stills was resisted by Irish distillers for years, with some arguing for restrictions in the use. In 1878, the Big Four jointly published a pamphlet entitled Truths About Whiskey. Propaganda at its finest. And they, what was it called? Good, Bad, Indifferent, but it cannot be whiskey and ought not to be sold under that name. There was even a Royal Commission.
It's like a element of sort of the French about it, how everything's named from a particular reason or a particular process.
Yep. And it's true. I mean, it's it's
cognac,
marketing
like brandy, cognac, exactly the same fucking thing, but cognac's from cognac.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. So there was even a Royal Commission in 1908 to investigate the issue. By this point, 60% of all whiskey produced in Britain and Ireland was made in coffee stills. In 1909, the Royal Commission settled the argument, declaring that whiskey could refer to the output of either coffee or pot stills. Because obviously, they had a fucking... they had an investment in it.
Yeah, for real. I guess too, if there's 60%, like they're getting a fair bit of tax out of it.
Fucking
You don't want to, protect your investment.
Oh, 100%.
Everyone's got an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, industry started to decline soon after. There was further pressure placed on the Irish distillers with the Irish War of Independence, then the subsequent Civil War, then the trade war with Britain, which cut off whiskey exports to Britain and all Commonwealth countries.
That would have hurt them.
That's nuts. Absolutely nuts. Because I think America was still a Commonwealth country at the time, and that was basically their largest export.
Yeah,
probably second largest export, other than maybe Britain itself.
Well, hang on. When was the War of Independence in America?
Well, this was the Irish War of Independence.
Yeah, I know, but I don't think America's been a Commonwealth country since, what, the 1700s?
Okay. Maybe I was mistaken. Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Fucking...
No idea. We'll put that in the show notes too. We always try and clear our own ignorance.
Because I think Commonwealth countries I can think of are all the things that play in the Commonwealth Games. And I don't think America play in the Commonwealth Games.
Oh, no, they definitely don't. But I'm not sure when they broke away from Britain.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll find that out. Some of you listeners probably already know. You're probably screaming at the fucking iPod right now. You ignorant fucks.
Oh, yeah. I'm not the one listening to it on an iPod, am I?
There was also prohibition in the United States. Pretty much fucked everybody. That severely curtailed exports. They also had widespread counterfeiting of whiskies in America and Britain, and protectionist policies introduced by the Irish Free State government significantly capped whiskey exports in the hope of taxing domestic consumption. And then finally, same old story, overexpansion and mismanagement at several Irish distillers, maybe sampling too much of their own product.
Patterson crash all over again.
By the early 20th century, Scotland had surpassed Ireland to become the world's largest whiskey producer.
You reckon there was a bit of fucking, just fuck those Irish guys. We can do that better.
For sure.
Right.
For sure. It's state of origin rugby league.
Yeah. Yep. Cane total cockroach dominance.
In 1966, John Metallica Jamieson and Megadeth Powers and Cork Distilleries Company amalgamated under the name of Irish Distillers and closed their existing facilities and focus their operations in a new purpose-built facility to be constructed beside the old to be constructed by the old Middleton Distillery Co. in Cork. In 1972, they were joined by the only other remaining Irish operation, Bushmills, so that by the mid-70s there were only 2 whiskey distilleries in operation in Ireland, both owned by Irish distillers, and only one of them having operated during the golden era, as they say. However, the 80s saw a bit of a resurgence, long and slow as it may be, which started with Cooley in 87 by John Teeling, and Pernod Ricard's takeover of the Irish distillers in 88 led to increased marketing of Irish whiskies, in particular Jameson. Since the 90s, it's gone gangbusters. As we said earlier, it's the fastest growing spirit in the world. In 2010, Kilbeggan, which had closed in 54, was reopened fully by Teeling.
Good old Johnny Teeling.
That pretty much wraps up the history of Irish whiskey in a nutshell.
Nice.
Looking forward to a bright and prosperous future.
Well, now that we've gone through how Irish whiskey got to where it is now, why don't we fucking taste
Let's get amongst it.
some Irish whiskies?
Let's get amongst it. Stick around for part 2.